Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a chiropractic student connection with Nate, soon to be chiropractor, doctor, all of that stuff. Nate, why don't you just introduce yourself, share and reflect a little bit about that time in life that you decided you want to become a chiropractor, like really what inspired you to go to chiropractic school and really sign up for this path?
Yeah. Thanks for having me again, by the way. I have an interesting thing because I want to be a physical therapist and all that. I feel like that's a common thing in our profession and applied to all these schools, got an interview, didn't really work out for me. And I was just going through a lot of, questioning like what I want to do with my life. Like, do I still want to do this physical therapy thing? Maybe apply, not get in again. And I had always kind of had chiropractic in the back of my mind. I've been seeing one since I was about 8 years old. So it was pretty well known in my family. My family sees chiropractors. So my dad just started like throwing that in my mind. And I just jumped into it and said, let's see what happens. And I didn't really have like what felt like a big pull or calling. It just felt like there was a connection. And I just needed to see what happens and just jump into it. And the purpose of it and the real like calling seems to have grown throughout the program, and to the point where now it seems like this real big like heartfelt connection to chiropractic and deep understanding of principles. And so that's kind of my story. Nothing
Mhm.
really big, but just
Well, I find it
unfolding.
fascinating. I think it's fascinating that you had been seeing a chiropractor since you were 8 years old, and it's a part of your family's fabric of how they take care of themselves and how they sort of go and see a chiropractor on a regular basis or at least on an annual basis. What was it that really pulled you to physical therapy? Was there any particular role model or person in your life? Was it an injury you had, experience at the physical therapist? Like, why weren't you thinking chiropractic first?
Yeah, I think my mind was set on exercise. Like, I just love the body. I'm fascinated with the body and like how it's just, I mean, it's just so complex and intricate, and we get to live with it every day. So I was just really fascinated by it. And I love to train. I love to work out, played sports my whole life. And yeah, I had a lot of injuries, but wasn't really a motivating factor. It was more just the fascination with exercise. And I just like had this like grit and drive, and I love to like put in work. And I saw myself working with athletes and maybe helping them reach a potential. So this idea of like reaching potential was always kind of in my mind. And um, how I saw like chiropractic later on helping with that was pretty incredible, because it kind of really aligned with the same reason I wanted to do physical therapy. But yeah, it was just my fascination with the body, and love of exercise. And yeah.
Can you get deep into what it was like to show up in chiropractic school in your first year of school and how being an athlete growing up helped you? Also, maybe the preparation of getting ready for physical therapy school. It's pretty rigorous, there's a lot of science. But maybe just talk about some surprises you encountered, some challenges you faced, but also how your background really helped you meet those challenges.
Yeah, so I had an interesting start, because my first two quarters were in person, and then we got hit with the pandemic, and that totally shifted everything for me, um, in terms of like difficulty and all that. And the first two quarters were pretty brutal for me. I was just going through a lot of like heartbreak, emotional stuff, and trying to be present. And I had all these sleep issues going on, and just was tired all day. So transitioning into online was kind of a lifesaver for me because I could really craft my schedule around my own time a little bit more. So it kind of helped me find my way out of that. And my background with fitness and exercise, I'd say mostly in college, because I rode crew in college for 3 years, and that just really keeps your mind, really toughens up the mind. I mean, you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, and everything's burning, and you're in so much pain. You got to keep going. It's just the hardest training I've ever put myself through. So I think, if anything, what exercise has taught me is that like what I think my limits are aren't my limits,
Hmm.
and that there's always so much more in me. And whether that's on a physical level or a mental level. And then the other thing is just that my mind's could be my best friend or my worst enemy. And most of the time it was my worst enemy. It was trying to talk me out of doing things. So when you're in a boat and everything hurts and you have a whole team relying on you, it's kind of like a good analogy for chiropractic. Like when you're going through these things, once I stopped making it just about myself and I realized like, well, there's people out there that I want to serve and I want to help. And if I keep making this thing about me, I'm not going to get through this. But when I saw the big picture, the big idea of like why I'm really here, like why I'm really doing this, that really translated over from like having a team to motivate you and inspire you, people relying on you. And it really helped me not quit when I wanted to.
Mm-hmm. No, it's really
Yeah.
interesting. Can you kind of reflect on the things that you naturally gravitated towards once you entered into the program? Because obviously there were a lot of resources that became available to you and were made, you became aware of them. You started going to clubs or you started checking out seminars. What did you gravitate towards? What would you recommend a student just getting into chiropractic school today? How should they approach those first couple semesters?
Yeah. So, like I said, kind of that first year was a lot of going within myself. And I was kind of separate from the chiropractic community in some ways. I was just really trying to heal what I had going on. And so I didn't go to a lot of clubs or do a lot of things that first year. Then I started to kind of like open up and feel like I was ready to kind of be extroverted again in some ways. And I was really drawn to like the BGI world and like people like doctors like John Martinez and Eric Rubin, Katina Manning, those people who, and the word gets thrown around. I don't even like to say this, but like tonal people. Um, yeah. So like I was just really interested in that whole like tonal aspect, biotensegrity. The body is like all interconnected and you can kind of access something from any place. And what I really liked about like the BGI lens was that it's not a dogmatic like approach. It's not like a technique. It's more of a way of which to work through and view the body. And I was really drawn to that because it welcomed all techniques to work through it. And so I just really started to dive into that a lot.
Hmm.
And yeah, so John's got Numa seminars that I really got into. Um, anything Eric Rubin was
How would you
teaching.
describe to somebody who's not familiar with some of these terms, what is NUMA, what is BGI to you? How would you break it down to say a first quarter student, just to
Mm.
introduce them to the possibility that they could go and check that out for themselves?
Yeah, it's so Numa, I think it just means like breath or something, the actual meaning of
It
the
means breath of life. Yeah.
breath of life. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, so John really he's really unique and I'll do my best to put this into words, but he just showed me, I guess I'll say this, he showed me that what I learned in school is very baseline and that there's so much more out there. So to get my eyes open to like what's possible and then getting to like see him adjust people in this very interesting way. Like he's jumping on the table, he's working through muscle tissue, he's doing like some stuff with drop with all these props and but it's a good question. Yeah,
Well,
so
why should somebody go and investigate that for themselves? What types of people would be attracted to that type of a path, and what are some tips that you might give to them to enter into that seminar, enter into that first sort of meeting with John, or as you said, BGI with some of the people that teach that?
honestly with John, I think if someone were to try that out, I would just say release all expectations and have an open mind. Um, and just get ready to just be surprised because he really has such honor and reverence for every person who's on his table, and you can really tell he's kind of a man of few words,
Mhm.
but he has a lot to say at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really going to make you think. He's really going to make you answer your own questions, and he might even just answer your question with another question. So like I think something to be prepared for is be open to having your constructs and how you view life maybe expanded a little bit, or put into question, or evaluated in some way. Not that he's doing that, but it's more like he kind of makes you look at yourself and what you're doing and what we're doing as chiropractors and really see it through a different lens. And he brings in some stuff from like Eastern traditions, like Vedic, like Chinese medicine, with like using like different elemental types, which is kind of maybe a little out there for some people, which I would understand. But I think you can he can really make these things relatable, though. I think he does a good job at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right
if
on.
that
So
answers your question.
one of the reasons that we brought you onto the podcast was just to really provide some context for what it's like to be a student, having gone through all the boards, having gotten into clinic now. You've
Almost
been
out.
through a lot of it, right? So can you maybe just kind of reflect in a general sense on how hard chiropractic school is? Obviously, you have your own personal challenges, but from an academic or from a curricular standpoint, like showing up every day? What are some things that are more refined for you now that you've how have you made school work for you? I guess is also what I'm asking.
Well, I kind of believe that anything's as hard as you want it to be. Um, and hmm, yeah, I trying to think of a way to make this summary, but yeah, I mean, I was put through a lot of challenges in school, outside of school. Um, I think something that I wish I'd found earlier, which has really helped me get through this like boards heat and everything, is having like self-care practices. For me, it's been like finding meditation, which I always had an aversion to and did not like at all. But I mean, it's had a huge impact on my stress levels and the way I'm able to move through this program and these things that are stressful. And, you take two people going through the same program and they're having entirely different experiences. One can be stressed out, terribly stressed out, and the other is maybe more calm. And I've noticed I've transitioned into more of like a calm state through this period of time, which is supposed to be probably the most stressful part, which is finishing everything up and doing twos, threes, PTs, and fours in 2 months. And so I think finding those things in your life and really setting that personal time aside to really look within and find what it is that is really making the program so hard or stressful. And I know those sometimes aren't the questions we want to ask ourselves because they're hard to answer. But I mean, to really truly decrease those stress levels and get through the hard tests and all these things, I mean, nothing's going to have a bigger impact than really finding out why and asking yourself those questions to begin with. If that speaks to your question.
Mhm. No, it does. It seems as though as your structure or your behaviors change, you started meditating, it shifted your perception of the program of day to day. Maybe had sort of a different way of approaching the classroom experience or the test taking experience or the boards taking experience or even the preparation process. It seems as though meditation really allowed all of that to change for you. Can you maybe get a little deeper as to how it changed or how things started to become a little less stressful once you started to meditate more?
Yeah, I got hit with a lot of things in life this last year and a half, and I found meditation about like last June. And what really shifted for me was being able to watch. I mean, the best way I could put this is kind of like watch my life go by without being so taken away by it. Like kind of allowing myself to step back and have this perspective of like a third person where maybe I'm stressed out, maybe I'm sad or pissed off or whatever it is, but I can kind of gain a little bit of separation between the feelings and the thoughts about the feelings. And what that allowed for was more space to find the answers to those issues. So it allowed me to really just gather um, myself together again, find a center rather than just being at the whim of every thought and emotion and experience that happens outside of me.
Mm.
So yeah, the huge shift was that. And also just some more like scientific meditative benefits was like my sleep was getting better, my memory was better. Great things to have when you're studying for tests. I felt like I didn't necessarily need as much sleep. I was sleeping a lot. My quality of sleep was up. I felt more refreshed throughout the day. And it's an interesting investment because I meditate 40 minutes a day, two sets of 20, one right when I get up and then one like at some point in the middle of the day. And it seems like, well, I don't have that kind of time, but I was finding like it was a huge investment because I was taking the time to meditate. And it felt like even though I was losing 40 minutes of my day, it felt like I had gained like 3 hours because I
Mm.
was way more efficient with everything I was doing. So my
Mm.
studying was, I'd study half the time, but I'd get twice as much done. So things
Mm.
like that.
Mm. Mm. No, that's really great. I appreciate you kind of touching on the importance of meditation because, so just to keep context building, Pre-Cairo is about helping people gain real world applicable skills, not just the like, how do I get into the program, but once I get into the program, how can I adapt as best as I possibly can? And what are the important skills that I need to develop within myself to really prepare and ready myself to, like, as you said, serve others and really help people in a chiropractic way. So I asked that question to you. What are some of the most important skills that you've developed as you're now going into clinic and taking care of people and getting ready to graduate soon? What types of skills have you developed in this short period of time of what, 2.5 years, 2 years, that you want to share with prospective students or incoming students that they should really hone in and focus on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. Um, Man, it's just everything just seems to come back to some aspect of inner work or meditation. What I mean by that, because that's pretty general, is I think whether you meditate or whatever it is, but finding that space to really like watch yourself work, watch your mind think. And I mean, it just applies to so many things. Like if you have more time and energy and space, it seems that the things that you naturally are drawn to seem to come to you a little more effortlessly and without so much struggle. I I find things just happening a lot more easily in my life. And so what I would say with that, like trust for me, like I'm a very spiritual person. I mean, believing in something bigger, which I think is pretty aligned with chiropractic, having working with that life force energy, that innate intelligence. I think it really goes hand in hand. For me, that's been huge. And it comes back again to making this more about myself. So trusting in something bigger than me, whether that's like a divine plan, you could call it like the magnificent organization of the universe of which designed this body and everything else, the plants, the bees, the trees, all of that. So having trust in that and taking space for myself and don't let go of the other things you love in life, because I think even though it may seem we don't have the time for those, whatever you like to do, I like to work out and I like to exercise, and to me that's really important. And I find like, yeah, maybe I don't have the most time to exercise, but if I let that go, then my mind starts to go, everything starts to go. So I'd rather sleep 45 minutes less a night and go get 45-minute workout, or just even if it's 10 minutes. So trying not to let go of those things that really support you as a person and who you are and what you love, because I think those things are what we ultimately bring into our practice, and the other like unique aspects of us as an individual, because people are going to come to us because they like what we have. And if we start letting go of ourselves, well, it's going to be lot harder to bring people in who are going to match with what you love, because they're not going to be seeing you doing those things, whether that's, actually physically seeing or just feeling it from being in your presence.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
No doubt. What are some things that are inspiring you these days? Where's your focus at? What are your priorities? Um, like what are some maybe intentions that you have in the short term that you're trying to work on or focus on?
Yeah. So after just taking this last part 4 board exam, I'm transitioning out of clinic. Actually, I'm just finishing up all my numbers. I got maybe less than what I can count on one hand of adjustments left. And um, personally, what I want to do next is I want to go to India. And that's where I actually found like the meditative practice as well. And I want to serve the population over there, because when I visited in June, the culture is so centered around service. And so something this ties into a good intention is that I'm trying to serve every second of my life and not make service about the hours that my office is open. Because to me, like, it's really a matter or a question of like what I'm serving and whom I'm serving. And to me, it is that like that innate intelligence, that higher power. And I see that that is in all of us. So if I'm serving that and trying to bring that out of a person so they can realize more about themselves and realize their potential, well, then it's not going to be only when I'm open hours that I'm doing this, but how am I engaging in conversations with people on the street? Am I looking away from people? Am I like smiling at them? Like, how am I interacting in the world? How am I showing up for myself? So really just evaluating what service truly means to me. And kind of circling back around is like in India, I was noticing like it didn't matter if someone was sweeping the floors, they were serving you at a 2-star restaurant, a 5-star restaurant. If they were, it didn't matter what their job was, but that culture is so service oriented where it's like whatever they're doing it. They're not thinking about something else. Like it felt like I was getting so much presence over there from people. It was like they were just appreciative to be alive. So waking up every day, like, I just went through probably the hardest year of my life, just on a lot of levels. And coming out of that and getting to be finishing this program right now and transitioning, it's like I'm just really happy to be alive, that I get to wake up. And I think get life. um did that cut me out?
Yeah,
You
you
good?
said I'm happy to be alive and then it cut out.
Yeah. um yeah, I'm really grateful to be here and to get this opportunity to exist. And now I have a little more free time for myself, so I'm reading all these books that I want to bring into my practice, um, and into my life, this newfound knowledge and wisdom. And yeah, training that part of the adjustment that I think really comes from doing that inner work, which is why I keep referencing this. Because if I'm in my own way and I can't be present with the person, that's really going to affect the way and how I'm able to impact their life or their body, or what I'm able to bring to them. If I'm Yeah. So if I'm centered, meditation, going within, asking yourself these deep questions, really like what John calls like cleaning out the basement. It's like you're cleaning out like all the stuff that doesn't serve you so you can best serve yourself, which is ultimately how I'm going to best serve other people. So that word service, I think, is really, it's thrown around a lot. And I think it's, in my personal opinion, I think it's it's something that I feel is applied to open hours. but service is, to me, it's becoming more of a way of life. And, I'm
Hmm.
serving before I walk into my office to serve people. It's just, yeah. And obviously I'm not 100% great at that, but constantly keeping that in the back of my mind.
Hmm.
So every moment has importance.
Mm. Mm. So just with your in the present moment, how would you describe kind of the difference, or how could you contrast this path that you've taken or that you've found, shall we say, discovered in the within the chiropractic path? How could you contrast that to what you imagine your path would have been had you gotten into physical therapy school and gone that route?
Oh man, I can't even imagine. Yeah, I mean, I question if these things are just going to find us one way or another. Um, maybe it would have looked different on the surface. Maybe I would have found the same thing. I don't know. Really don't know. That's a hard question to answer, but I think something about this school and this place and the people I met along the way were definitely unique in that it has really shaped me into this person I am today. And I guess if anything, that it might have taken me a little bit longer if I'd gone to physical therapy school. But I used to have these like judgments of like, man, sorry about that. I don't know if that's me or what. Um, but yeah, so I think I had these judgments and like that trying to compare like what's better, but I think everything serves a purpose. And whether I'd been a chiropractor or a physical therapist or an MD, I mean, it really just comes down to service again. Like, how am I showing up for people? Am I making this about myself? Like, am I making this about the money I'm making? Of course, that is important on some level, but yeah. So if I would have hoped that I would have found the same uh, philosophy of life through that path, but I don't know because it's a very, very different.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just always find it fascinating to reflect because I also was going the PT route. I was a pre-PT student, and one of the things that I like to say is that I became a chiropractor because I can deliver the service right there on the table as
Yeah.
opposed to prescribing something and putting my faith in somebody's ability to listen to my recommendations when it's not truly them coming to those truths themselves, but it's them adopting my truths and actually listening to me and following me, as opposed to me adjusting somebody and then I can empower somebody to follow their own path. And there's a little bit of a truth in that statement, but there's also
Mm.
just me wanting to contrast it for people who are like, why didn't you become a physical therapist? And it's like, well, I can make sure that I'm making a life changing impact right here in the office and not just hope that somebody is changing their life because a lot of people don't care as much as we do as providers. But anyway, that's a side
Yeah.
tangent, but it's interesting to really create your story of why you became a chiropractor and why you're not a physical therapist. And it's funny that we have to say why we're not physical therapists, but it's also a really cool little exercise to think about, like, why wouldn't you want to be a physical therapist? Why are you really happy that this became your path, you know?
Yeah, I think that is again like those questions we should ask ourselves, like really inquiring like into like why we're here, what we're doing, why we're doing it. And actually you reminded me of that. You reminded me of another big reason was why I wanted to be a chiropractor was because I was working in a physical therapy office for that whole year. I was waiting to get into school and I just noticed that like they're still working for someone is they're working for a doctor. They have to work with doctors and I noticed like, oh, I'm still kind of taking orders and I want like more freedom in how I work with people and before you can even like if someone sent him for a knee thing, you can't touch their elbow because that's not the main thing. So they got to go get another thing for the elbow for. So yeah, that was one thing that really pushed me away from physical therapy is because, you know, if especially now with this new lens of like the biotensegrity model of the body being all interconnected, if I had to work on only the part I was told to work on, I mean, I would probably have a hard time. I don't know how long I'd last with that because, I love the ability and the freedom to work with people how I see best serves them. And I think doing that through chiropractic with that point is a lot. I think it's a lot better way to for me at least to help people. There's not as much restrictions there, and that's important to me.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Can you just really quickly touch on what are the board exams and like what is the level of emphasis or priority that's placed on them as a student? How important are they? How do most students prepare, or how did you prepare? And like, what was your experience of taking them?
Yeah. Um, so one, if you want a license, they're as important as it gets, because otherwise you're not practicing here at least. Or you can go to India because you don't need a license there. um, but yeah, I took that first board exam and I passed like 4 sections, so I had to retake a couple, and I got kind of lucky there because I didn't study that much because I just got hit. Like I was just getting hit with a lot of stuff during school. So I think I studied maybe 9 days, and somehow I pulled off passing the 4 sections. Um, and I just didn't have my mind in the right place. I was just very like more anxiety. I was kind of like, this is why I wish I had meditation then because I was very scatterbrained. I couldn't like, I'd sit down to focus, and it's hard for me to get my attention like here. And so I decided that I would take twos, threes, PTs, and fours kind of all in one go, which it might not be for everybody. But after doing it now, I find there's actually kind of an advantage if you're not someone prone to burnout and you can put up with it. I had planned out my schedule in such a way where by the time I was taking boards, I was pretty much done with a lot of classes. So I didn't have to really worry about all these classes. And some teachers are cool and they kind of like maybe like push things back for, when they know everyone's taking boards. And so I'd planned my schedule in such a way where, yes, I was going to be taking all these at the same time, but I didn't really have a lot of class going on. So I could really just go like 100% into boards. And I had found a way of studying that I just randomly came across or thought of one day where I just started going on walks with my boards packet. And so I just walk around the neighborhood and I was doing like 25,000 steps a day. And that was my study time. And I would just go randomly sit at parks and I'd keep reading if I want to sit down for a bit and I just walk. And that really worked for me. So I think finding something that works for you it made me want to study because I'm like outside, I'm getting fresh air, I'm not hunched over a computer. So I found a way that really worked for me and that was super empowering and it made me want to study because I felt like also something to do with kind of getting a little oxygen in my brain with the walk was really helping my thinking mind and the retaining of things. And that might not be for everyone. Um, yeah, I I mean, they're kind of stressful, you know, but I think fours was the most stressful because it's in person and they just kind of hammer you in there. But I think it's important to know it's not the end of the world if you don't pass because you're going to be a chiropractor and it might take you a little bit longer or maybe you're faster at it, whatever, getting to the point of licensing at least. And I think it's important to remember that. Like maybe we have deadlines for ourselves, maybe we have goals, but if you don't pass and then you just like beat yourself up about it, well, that's not helping anybody. And it's definitely not helping you. And I think knowing that like if you just put in the work, it's going to happen for you and just having faith in that is super important because I mean, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I think just if you don't pass, like the quicker you can let it go and just start back, pick up pick up your feet and keep going, yeah, I think you're going to get the most out of it that way.
I have a book here called Life Without Fear,
Mm,
and it says right here chiropractic major philosophical tenets. You ever heard of this book?
I have not. Looks good.
So this is by Fred Barge.
Ah,
You heard of him?
yeah.
And I think what you just spoke about there is the importance of getting to a place where you've studied chiropractic deeply enough, you've done the inner work deeply enough that you're eliminating and uprooting the fear that
Mm,
resides in the mind. And when you can enter into a test knowing that even if you don't pass, it's not the end of the world. That's a statement that you just made that is really giving people a strategy to eliminate fear from their approach to taking these really important, seemingly very important tests, which they're important, but like you said, there's always a second chance or a third chance or a fourth chance. And there's lessons to be learned in all of it, right?
yes.
Sometimes failure is the best thing that could happen to people because it gives them a chance to reinforce it even deeper the second time around or reflect on what they could have done differently or realize they weren't trying hard enough. All these different things that are self realizations, which, as you've alluded to throughout the interview, is the important sort of common denominator of chiropractic studies. When you go to chiropractic school, I think the reason you keep coming back to like bring it back to your center, create space for you to explore what makes you tick, what are your interests, what are your beliefs, and really reflect as much as possible throughout the program. It gives these
Mm,
opportunities for fear to drop off and for you to actually become a chiropractor. I mean, I think that's what becoming a chiropractor is really all about. That's what this podcast is really all about, is even though it might seem at times when you were giving answers to me that, hey, this is not on topic, it's actually right on topic. This is actually what matters. So I just want to appreciate you for like being a little vulnerable with just saying, hey, you know, I'm not
yeah.
really talking at all about the classes. I'm not really giving you any information about the curriculum or the campus or the teachers or even the student culture. It's more just about what I had to reflect on as my experience. And that's all that any of you students really have is what it's what I have today as a
Mm.
chiropractor is how am I reflecting on my experiences? And yeah, that's great. It's all good.
Yeah, if I could add one more thing that you helped bring up. One, thank you. That was a on point summary. I love that. And yeah, I think a lot of that fear with the boards too stems from we have an idea of how it should go in comparison to how other people are doing it too. So if we think all these people are passing and I need to be passing first time or second, whatever it is, well, that just adds to your stress and fear and like because we have a schedule, but really we could plan things out. We could think of all possibilities, and there's still going to be more possibilities, and there's still going to be things you didn't account for. So, like, there's some aspect of like surrender there where you just have to go in. And something that was important to me with those tests was just feeling like I didn't leave anything on on the court. Like, did I do my best to study for this test? And if I can answer yes to that question, then whatever was going to happen in that test, it didn't matter because honestly, if I'd studied for another week or another hour, I didn't think it was going to make a difference because there's some level of unpredictability in that test, just like with life. So I think being content with how much you studied and being okay with how much you studied and accepting whatever happens is going to be huge. And I think if you do that going into the test, then you'll be a lot more calm. And we all know we can think better when we're not ridden with anxiety and we're in a more centered and calm place. And you might just find yourself clicking answers that you don't even know. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right on, brother. Any final messages or any final things like if you were to give like a little bit of a download right now on something that you are super crisp and specifically have dedicated a lot of focus towards crystallizing and refining for yourself that you could maybe share for a student who's walking a similar path to you, is there, I don't know, any resources, any specific topics that are like really specific to a specific person that's interested in a specific thing? I know you've touched a lot on meditation, but is there anything else that's also Cairo centered, Cairo specific that you personally can say, hey, when I look at the things that I've focused the most on in this program, like even extracurricularly, like this is the topic that I've been most passionate about. And like even you've mentioned biotensegrity, but you haven't really gone deep and like given a download on connecting different anatomical structures and landmarks and what subluxation tracks actually are to you, or if you want to get, I'm just giving you the floor, I'm giving you the mic in case you want to kind of riff for a minute and give some insights into your mind and to your mental processes around anything chiropractic related.
Yeah. I mean, all those things I'd love to touch on, but what keeps popping in my mind is understanding your own heart. I think really trying throughout the program, I've let down a lot of walls around my heart. I've let go of a lot of beliefs, and I've allowed myself to experience a lot of pain and suffering and heartbreak. And it's not fun, but it's been huge. And I really see now when I talk about heart, like I'm not just talking about like the anatomical heart, but I feel like the heart is like this center of like intuition. That's where the presence comes from. That's where I feel like I connect to people the most. And so by understanding my heart, I mean like really peeling back what's getting in the way of you like loving every single person on this planet. And that's maybe a stretch for a lot of people because there's a lot of people we think aren't good and evil and and I understand, but I think that my biggest spiritual practice is you know, if I have a problem with someone, I'll put a picture of them on my altar space and I'll try to feel like love for that person. And it's been quite interesting because it brings up a lot of things within yourself that maybe are really about you and not that person. You know, and I going within here, it's like I find just the more vulnerable I get in life, the stronger I actually feel. And it's kind of paradoxical because the heart, like as you peel and break down these walls, it feels more like raw, but there's this strength that comes with like really tuning into yourself and finding that integrity and that love within yourself. And you're less apt to be thrown off balance too, because now things are starting to become your happiness is starting to become from within yourself. And that really pairs with the meditation too, because I'm not at whim to these things going on outside of me, because truly there's never going to be a time where something isn't going on outside of me that could potentially throw me off, unless if I've done the work and really figured out what it is in here that I believe in. Because if I find that thing within myself, I believe that's the only place that will really not change, is that like deeper presence of heart. And why I think this is so important as a chiropractor is because I mean, what better way to connect with people than to really open up this space for them and show them through your empathy, through your compassion, that you really understand their predicament and you can feel into it where you almost let yourself feel their pain to the point where it hurts for you because you feel it for them. But as a chiropractor, at the same time, we're offering a way out of that. So we have to like really be able to hold that meditative, that unattached perspective of like watching it all happen. So these two practices like really pair well together because they're kind of parallels in that one of them is putting you in the person's shoes, and then the other one is being like, okay, well, if I wasn't in their shoes, or if I was in their shoes, like I can bring myself out and see like how I might be able to help myself or them out of this circumstance. And I mean, this guy Ram Dass has had a huge impact on my life, my spiritual life, and where I got a lot of these teachings from. And something he says about letting down the walls of your heart and being more vulnerable is like you can't afford not to do it. And what I got from that is it's kind of a paradox because we think by protecting ourselves, we're preventing ourselves from being hurt. But I find it doesn't matter if I'm protecting myself or not, I'm going to get hurt either way. And if you can accept that, like, there's just pain in the world and there is suffering in the world, and that's just a fact of life, then I think the quicker we can get on with just feeling what we need to feel and then doing what we can do in that moment to really relieve some of it. And yeah, so that's why the heart practice is so important to me. Like, really going, that's also what I mean about going within. And yeah, I mean, I'll spend some nights just like sitting on my floor and I'll just run through things that have hurt me in my life and like really dive into like what really hurt about that. And really just every time I'm trying to point outside of myself, I just point right back to myself. And I evaluate why I have that in the first place, why I'm thinking that in the first place. And I find that everything really just comes back to me. And it doesn't really matter what it is out there. I can find something within myself that's representative of that.
Hmm.
And the more that truth is being ingrained in me, I find myself not pointing outside so much or even feeling like I need to judge people or blame people for anything, because there's that level of responsibility that, we're all in this together. As chiropractors, like, we can have differing beliefs and we are unique, but we're all on planet Earth, and there's no way of getting out of that. So I think the sooner we accept that we're all in this thing together, then we can really do what really needs to be done to start maybe relieving some of that pain and suffering, which I think, like, is a big part of service.
Hmm.
So that's
Hmm.
my
Yeah.
riff.
Yeah, I think one of the elements of what you spoke on was bravery, and you come to a place of bravery when you've gone through some really difficult, complex, challenging times, and then you've come to the other side of that and realized that wow, it didn't kill me. I got stronger. I learned. It was an opportunity for me to grow. And you don't get to choose the people that come into your practice. So having a strong heart, having a strong intuition, allows you to meet people where they're at and have a sense for what they're going through. Even if you've never experienced that yourself, just by hearing their words, if you're truly actively listening with your heart and trying to really connect with them on a deep level, then we're all operating on different planes of consciousness. But if you do that work and you are leading from this place of intuition and compassion and empathy, that no matter who comes into your office, no matter what situation they're going through, you're going to be coming from a place that's solution oriented, that's accepting of them, that's not treating them any different than you would treat somebody that you cared and loved very much. So you have to work to get to this place inside yourself. But as you're saying, once you do that hard work within, everything else gets better, because everybody that comes into your office, it almost turns into a bit of a celebration of you getting them to accept their stories, their pains, getting them to detach from the outcomes of your services, of their healing process, of why they feel they are in the position that they're in. It's you just helping like tease apart the layers and help them detach from all these things that are preventing them from just accepting, forgiving, being grateful, moving forward, growing, not being a victim of circumstance. And that's that chiropractic like energy that we
Mm.
bring every single day. That's what it means to be a chiropractor, what you're describing, that sort of that heart centeredness you're talking about. Sid Williams, the creator of our school Lifewest, called it lasting purpose.
Mm.
You know, I don't know if you read any of his books, but
I have.
some great advice was given to me recently, which was when deciding on what is the next book you're going to read, just look at the books you have read, and whichever books that you feel the best about, like whichever people you learned from the best, just look for other books by them and read every book that they wrote. So I got really turned on to Sid Williams' writings, to Fred Barge's writings while I was in school, Joe Strauss's writings. And I just made it a point now to be going back and reading every book from their collection that I either haven't read or that I want to revisit and read again, because it just fills you up as a chiropractor when you can read these sort of principles of healing, principles of how to be in the world, how to be accepting, how to think from above down, inside out, and lead from inside out, and not lead from taking in information, but from more taking it in through your filters and then just kind of creating something beautiful out of anything that comes towards you. Right? There's opportunities in every single room we enter, where we just have to discover them or uncover them. So, anyway, I really appreciate you just being vulnerable, sharing today. Is there any final messages that you want to leave for a prospective student, incoming student, current chiropractors? I'm just curious where your head is at after hearing me talk like that.
Hmm. I'm just feeling a lot of love and grateful for this opportunity and just to talk with you. This has been really great. So, thank you for the questions that you've asked that have allowed for this to happen. Um, Helping me go there. Yeah. No, I think I've said pretty much
Yeah.
everything I could say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, my goal or intention behind doing these types of conversational interviews is basically to help people process the experiences that they're going through in a way that helps others that come after them gain exemplary experiences. Like, oh, this is an example of somebody that had this type of experience and this type of experience. And I think that that would be a great sort of library or body of information to fill up, like to grow. Like I'm trying
Mm,
to grow these types of trees where somebody gets introduced to you before they go to chiropractic school, they hear about your journey, and not that they have expectations created from your stories, but that they can relate. Or if they're in school and they're going to approach boards, they can hear some of your messages and relate because you are right there next to them, you know? It's something that I think we didn't have enough of when we were going through chiropractic school, is like fellow students sharing insights and sharing their experiences. And I truly believe that the students have so much potential that is not being given as a platform or an opportunity for them to express where they're at or where their inspiration is at. It's like just providing a platform for people to really, like you said, grow, process, reflect. I think it's super healthy, and I think that it's something that more students should be given the opportunity of. So that's why we're here. And thank you for being open to even having these types of conversations, because I think that
for-
students a lot of the time shy away. Like they're invited to do something and they're like, I don't have time or I don't have energy. But you've been sort of persistent of like, hey, let's do it, let's do it, let's make it happen. You know, I don't have time now, maybe in a month, but let's do it. So it's good. It's
yeah.
openness.
Thank you. This has been great. I love it.